Tabletop wargame Age of Sigmar from Games Workshop is what got me back into the world of all miniature warfare and painting-related adventures. After a bit of messing around resulting in the discovery of my now important personal mantra, only paint what I like the look of if I want to get things done and on the table. I eventually, like a year later, got a full army together. An army that I adore. I dubbed my army the Stormcast Ninja Rangers, also a result of another now important personal mantra. Baptize my projects, and not only do they become more real and thus important to work on, a name results in stories. Stories that helps the mind figure out moods and color schemes. I've done videos on all of this in the past, but there are two things I have passed by. One is to do a proper showcase. Talk about the army in detail, how it was painted, and display it as a finished piece. Sort of. Secondly, I haven't talked about how it died. Let's start with the less gruesome topic. The Stormcast Ninja Rangers are fast, sneaky, and well, kind of rude. Stabbing someone in the back from the comfort of a concealed shrubbery is a preferred method of attack. Long-range shooting, a simple way of surviving close-quarter combat, isn't too bad a choice of tactic, either. Let's start with the basic troops. I initially settled for a modern warfare-inspired color scheme, airbrushing layers of blue-grey in a zenithal-style approach on the excessive armor, applying brighter and brighter layers to achieve a sense of depth. This was my first attempt at airbrushing, and having a batch of more than 20 miniatures working repeatedly with the same colors and techniques was a great way to get into and used to the airbrush. I'm personally not very fond of completely uniform armies, so I tried to vary what I could, dividing the miniatures in front of me into 3 or 4 batches, giving every batch their own variety of camouflage loincloths. Jumbling those batches up into new batches, giving every new batch their own variety of pelt cloaks. In the end, on the whole, not many of these vanguard hunters have exactly the same outfit. The miniatures were then highlighted, rusted, scratched, stained, and detail painted with a brush with different levels of detail and attention depending on my mood of the day. A common piece of advice is to paint regular troops more efficiently and heroes with more detail. For me, I find that painting how I want on that given day is what keeps me going, and that creating a set of rules of how to paint can be quite grinding in the long run. To break up the monotony, also because of in-game point costs, I acquired a unit of sellswords. This unit was told to camouflage up by the quartermaster, but they didn't quite listen, quoting the fact that there could be a world out there where red and blue checkered armor is camouflage. Also, we can't really afford a new paint job on the armor. We already spent our money on dice and fermented squig. These miniatures were a result of experimenting with the grimdark, and they actually have their own dedicated video. My favorite units in the army are these Paladors. The riders were painted in the same colors as the previous hunters, but later on toned black to separate them from the rest of the gang. The bird horses were tremendous fun, inspired by real-life birds in the garden in the country house. I enjoy the thought of little fluffy cute birds scaled up to monster size, but also the clash with my camouflage theme. Nature arranges itself in mysterious ways, and despite my Stormcast's need for stealth, they just can't change nature's ways. The bird horses were airbrushed initially. As a shade, the darkest color, I used the same almost blue-black as I used on the armor of most of the army, to bind things together. But then I went full-on bird, using photographs as reference. The birds were highlighted with brush and regular acrylic paints, but to get smooth transitions on the larger areas of hide, I resorted to oil paints, making it possible to blend in subtle shadows and highlights on the very smooth, airbrushed transitions. Now let's get into some shooting, starting to go overboard with my camouflage theme here. These crossbow machine gun wielding folk were experimentally airbrushed, first in a red-brown, in a zenithal style. I then twined them with a thin rope, and then zenithal airbrushed on layers of blue, Once the twined rope was removed, I got this semi-random modern camouflage look. Going even further overboard, I did another masking experiment on these snipers. First airbrushing on dark muted greens, covering the miniature as best as I could with a brass hexagon mesh, and then airbrushing on brighter and brighter greens. The initial result was quite indistinct, and I have gone in with a brush and highlighted every single hexagon. The overgrown parrot, by the way, is also a common garden bird, this one commissioned by my son. These two shooty units really like to have birds around for some reason. I think mainly selfish reasons. These birds are the cannon fodder of the army. Quite entertaining to imagine the cloud of feathers right after the cannonball hits. Anyway, the first three were also painted as birds found in Sweden, some a bit rare, like the bee-eater, for example. The last three were more efficiently painted, an experiment in using the instant colors from scale color, paints I'm still trying to befriend. 2 ballistas, between the choice of one or more is better. One from the Soul Wars box and the other is bought standalone, a fun little detail for someone like me in regards to having as varied an army as possible. The first was airbrushed at the same time as the Hunters, giving it the same muted blue style. The miniature with the black base is not finished, by the way, but we'll get to that later on. The second ballista, I purposely just tried to make it different from the first, while still staying in a modern warfare world. Both ballistas were airbrushed the one color and then masked with either blue tack or airbrush masking putty, then airbrushed again to achieve the camouflage pattern. The copper, quote, non-metallic metal, unquote, on the crew has now entered my army as a favoured feature. Something I continued to use on other units because I like it, but also to bind the slight irregular themes together. My 2 favourite heroes, a wizard on a very humorous heroic base, and Neve. Neve Black Talon here is probably my favourite miniature so far. I think the sculpt is just fantastic. She's painted just like the Hunters, but with a lot more hours put in on the brushwork. The wizard has a red twist to the modern warfare blue-grey to make her a little bit more arrogant. The bronze is back, and a bit of fancy OSL on the vials and superhuman eyes. More heroes. These 2 are forks in the road. Experiments made to fit into the army with the help of semi-entertaining stories. The big fellow with wings was my first attempt at non-metallic metal gold. I dubbed my result non-metallic metal mustard. Because of the camouflage theme, I figured this is great flying camouflage, armor like a golden sun and blue sky wings. Let's just hope there's not a cloud in sight. The bird is painted like a duck, by the way. The hero with the big hammers was an experiment in painting white armor. Enlisted at short notice, this poor fellow didn't have time to change out his winter fatigues, and thus shines like a beacon on the muddy battlefield. Again, there's the unifying bronze weaponry. Finally, my general, a zenithal-primed bird dog and an arrogant hero. Apart from the bird dog, the general, who is Neve Black Talon's long-lost twin sister, by the way, is the least finished miniature in the army. Yes, we're still getting to that. The bird horse is actually inspired by a bird that can be found in Sweden, only I've never seen one. I picked it out of a bird book for the cool plumage. It is a pretty good example, though, of how the other bird horses looked before highlights and oil paint. Minus the 1 foot. The arrogant hero on the right took the orders of camouflage like a true aristocrat and ordered a set of armor inspired by the beautiful colors of autumn. So here is another lovely beacon of light, this time orange, having a busy time dodging arrows on the battlefield. He also has his own video, by the way. The entire army is quite the mix, not only in color schemes. I've made a point of trying to kit bash some elements to make them my own. Also to bring in as many female characters as I can. Skin tones are varied. For me, it would be strange if they were not only for the sake of diversity, but because of the vastness of the empire this faction represents. All units have been splattered with dirt and further dirtied with pigment powders. Not only because of the story in my head, but also as a way to bind all these varied paint jobs together. They're all stained by the same dirt. I've also painted the rim of the bases with abyssal blue. The very dark blue that is used on pretty much all miniatures in some way. To my eye, this makes the rim slightly less obtrusive than a black rim, and also binds these 2,000 points of Stormcast nicely together. And so, why are there unfinished elements still? Well, let's talk about how this army died. After about a year of painting, with only a few miniatures left to finish, it was apparent that a new release of Age of Sigmar was coming. Yes, this game comes in editions. And with every edition comes quite the change in rules and army layouts. And so I thought to myself, maybe I should just wait and see. Maybe I have to change some small details in the army. Better not paint those last bits. As it turns out, now that Age of Sigmar 3 has been out for a while, I've had time to review my wishes and options, and one miniature from my army will make it over into the new one. Now you might be thinking, a new one? Now what? A new army? What are you talking about? You just finished this one. Well, this is a coin of many sides, or maybe that should be dice. When new editions are released, the points for existing units are most oftenly altered, together with their abilities, to keep the game in balance but also to steer the game towards whatever theme Games Workshop thinks would be nice for the new edition. And, honestly, to make people buy more models instead of just sticking to what they've got. For some, this is a big deal. The carefully built card house of an army with every unit in perfect balance with the rest. Then one card suddenly changes shape. The entire army collapses into a pile of troll turd. For others, it's more like, they change things? Oh, well, I still play my childhood Tomb King's army and they don't even have a rulebook, so I made my own. For me, it's a middle ground. I've entered a relationship with a company that is, like most companies, intent on making money. There are other games out there to play if one wants to avoid these type of issues. Also, on the whole, and I don't mean this in a demeaning way, but through my eyes, this is a game with toys to play and have fun with. I don't intend to get seriously upset by a stat change. That said, my army cannot be put together in the same constellation as before, if I play by the rules. Something I intend to do. You don't have to, though. But my puny attempts at strategy are no longer viable. On the other hand, I tried playing the new edition a little while back with a totally improvised army, made up from whatever Stormcasts I could find in boxes. And you know what? I had lots of fun, because playing games is fun. So what really is the deciding factor? Well, playing a faction like the Stormcast, the largest faction in the game, gives many options. Like playing Space Marines in 40k or cards in Magic the Gathering. I have more units to choose from than some have pages in their army books, and thus, when a new edition is released, I'm equally as cursedly blessed with a wave of new options. As so happens, this time, I like them all. I did get the Dominion box, and I want to use a lot of the miniatures from the box, because I like the look of them. The combination of new miniatures and the changes to the rules of my old have led me to plan a completely new army, and I'm very much enjoying the thought. I think maybe finishing an army was a tad overrated. Working on one is where the fun lies, for me. This revelation has given me a completely new insight and peace of mind when it comes to army painting. I now have a bunch of new miniatures to paint. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm not going to let it stress me. Because now I know that when I'm done, I will probably find yet another reason to paint even more. So why rush things, or get stressed over unsatisfactory progress? I'd rather just keep on painting. Thank you for watching and for your support. Bye.